Michael Nagy here with Jiggy Jag TV, and I'm here with Otep. How you doing today?
I'm alright, how are you?
Doing good, doing good. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with the Otep band, you want to tell us a little about the messages in the band?
We're an uncompromising political band that gives a fuck about what anybody thinks about us.
Now, about some of your messages, you want to tell us a little about that? What do you stand for?
Well, I'm a liberal, so I believe in the working class. I come from the working class. We also stand for people who are misfits and outcasts of this culture. We stand up for equal rights for the LGBTQ community, for the Black Lives Matter community, and for all marginalized communities, especially immigrant rights, which is happening right now, and we pretty much hate all Trump supporters.
It's pretty inspiring how you're able to stand up and fight for what you believe in and the cause.
I think it's pretty easy. You just have to believe in something, you know. People think that it's hard to stand up for something that you believe in, but why? Right. People do that with sports teams. Shouldn't your country matter more than your sports team? I think it should. I think we're all Americans and we're all brothers and sisters in this country, and you should care about your brothers and sisters, whether it affects you directly or not. So I do have a platform, and I use my platform for what I think, whether people agree with me or not, but what I think is for a good cause, and that's to help people.
You know, some of the topics are pretty extreme. I'm wondering, do you think that's helped you, hurt you as an artist, or just people respect that, your views and stuff?
You have to ask my fans about that. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 16 years, about half my life, almost 2 decades, so I think I'm doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
So,
how do you think it's progressed over time, the band?
I think we're, right now, with regards to what?
Just the style.
Our style, I think.
Yeah.
I think our style's gotten better. I think we've become better players, better musicians, better songwriters. I think we've got a bigger platform now than we did when we first started. I think people understand who we are. I'm not just some female singer that's up there using her body to try to sell records, which is what a lot of singers in this genre do. There's only a few that I respect. Lead singer Ginger, of course, I think she's amazing. Singer One Eye Doll, I think she's amazing. Emily Autumn, thinks she's amazing. But there's also a lot of, and there's a lot of other bands too that I'm forgetting. But you know, the ones that tend to make a lot of the headlines, get a lot of the festivals, tend to play into the idea of what a woman should be, or this old stereotypes and what's set down by the patriarchy. And you know, we're just I've never been a part of that. My biology should play it shouldn't play into whether or not I write good songs, or whether we blow other bands off the stage or not, which we do.
Yeah. Now you got a new album, Cult 45. So you want to tell us a little about that?
It's called Cult 45 because it is about the people that elected the 45th resident of the United States, Cheeto Schindler. That's what I like to call him. Aside from the Russians, of course, but those people who are racists and bigots and homophobes and xenophobes and who are nationalists, which is just a code word for racism, think that they own this country. When how are you gonna deny immigrants on stolen land? This land belonged to the Native Americans before we got here. They were here 13, 15, 20,000 years before the first European ever showed up, and he was lost at sea. You know, Columbus didn't discover America. America was already here, or what we call America. There's a reason why they didn't name it after him. It's named after Amerigo Vespucci, not Columbus. Columbus was a war criminal. He was a slave owner, and just an overall piece of shit. So I'm glad that, at least where I come from, Los Angeles, California, on the west, I'm happy that they've torn down his statue because he represents a really, really bad part of our history as a country. And I don't think, to paraphrase anyway, the late great James Baldwin, I love my country enough to look back on her sins and and not let people forget them, because that's how historical amnesia happens, and that's how big voids happen, and that's how history repeats itself when we don't remember where we come from and how awful we started when women didn't have the right to vote, when we were committing one of the biggest genocides in the world's history of Native Americans, when we bought and owned people, slaves, when people owned other people, how you could do that and then justify it by biblical verses, which is just bullshit anyway. And then women didn't have the right to vote in this country until the 20s, and we had women out there, you know, getting arrested, beaten, acid thrown in their faces just so they could get the right to vote. So, you know, our forefathers were stole a lot of really great ideas: democracy from the ancient Greeks, the Senate from the ancient Etruscans, who then the Romans borrowed from, the Iroquois Federation, which Benjamin Franklin was a big part of. So, you know, we stole a lot of great ideas from a lot of great thinkers. But our forefathers were flawed people. They were trying not to pay taxes anymore to the King of England, so they wanted to make their own country here, and here we are. So, you know, we've got a long way to go to reach our promised capacity as Americans, and the only way to do that is to keep fighting. And it starts from the bottom up, not from the top down.
Gotta keep fighting.
That's right.
Now, there was a point, I think the album, Hydra, you said that was your final album, but then you decided to keep continuing.
Mm-hmm.
Why were you thinking about ending?
Well, because the music industry is run by crooks and corrupt fucking people who don't care about bands. All they care about is the money they make off the bands. So I didn't really want to contribute that anymore. I didn't want to make ridiculously idiotic rich people richer off of my fans buying our albums and music sales in that way. So I decided I'd take some time off. I do other work. I'm a voiceover artist. I work in film and video games, so I have a good career there. But you know, I love music.
Yeah, I guess it was like, I gotta keep spreading the message,
So
spreading the word.
I
right?
took some time off, and then, you know, I spoke to my band, and we decided if we were going to do it, then we're just going to keep doing it our way.
Yeah.
And I think people respect us for that.
Cool. Now, where do you think the band is progressing? Do you have any plans? What are your plans for the future?
We're going to keep doing what we're doing. We're going to keep defying stereotypes and pissing a lot of people off, hopefully, but we're also inspiring a lot of people. I mean, this is the first, you know, I've been speaking out against corrupt politicians, namely George W. Bush during the Iraq War, because I come from a military family, so I have the right to speak out as someone who has family who served, whose family who's died in the military. And whenever I talked about people getting out and voting, usually the response from fans was very timid. This time around, during the midterms, it was just an incredible wave of support, and we saw what would happen. The Democrats retook the House, which is what we wanted, because they own all the judiciary committees, which means they can hold this traitor who's sitting in the Oval Office accountable, and he can't stop Robert Mueller's special investigation anymore. And even if he does, the Democrats can open their own investigations, which means they can start subpoenaing his tax returns and finding out where all of his money comes from, and stop, you know, hiding all the bullshit that the Republicans have hid. They're all gutless, spineless, you know, pieces of shit. And I think that, you know, with the death of George H. Bush recently, I didn't agree. I mean, I wasn't old enough to really understand what was going on in the country at the time when he was president, but looking back through the LGBT culture and how what he and Reagan did to the LGBT culture when the AIDS epidemic first started, and how they were cutting off funding to AIDS patients, how they were refusing people to come into this country to get treatment for AIDS, and how they were just letting people die. I think hundreds of thousands of people died from AIDS during George H. Bush's presidency, and I think that that's a shame. One of the things I will say about his wife, though, Barbara Bush, she was one of the first people to break the stigma of this weird idea about AIDS, when she walked into a nursery and she picked up one of the AIDS babies, which all the other nurses refused and other people refused to touch them. She actually picked up this baby, and she reminded everybody that this is a baby, you know. This is a baby with a disease that it didn't know that it had, that it was born with. So she actually humanized that child, and I thank the Bush family for that. And I think over time, you know, as a lot of people do, and I give them that respect when they have a change of heart. You know, some people are born into racist families, but then as they grow up, they grow older, they realize that racism is wrong, or they're homophobic, and then they start to become friends with other people, and they realize that that's wrong. And really, I fight for women's reproductive rights as well. I'm openly gay. I'm a lesbian. Reproductive rights have no. I'm not gonna get pregnant. I'm gay. So, but at the same time, I feel like that it's a woman's right to choose whatever she wants to do with her own body, and to all the pro-lifers out there, my suggestion is to stop, because we played a show recently, and the show was near a women's reproductive rights clinic, where they do perform all different kinds of things, pap smears. They give out birth control to families that need it, but they also they do perform abortions at this place. And they had 3 people out there to protect the people, and they had these protesters who were going back and forth and kind of threatening the people going in. And I said, look, I got a solution for you. How about mandatory vasectomies? How about that? Then we don't got to worry about unwanted pregnancies anymore. How about boys? Why don't you step up? If you're pro-life, then do that. Snip, snip. Game over. They can reverse vasectomies. It's easy. It's an easy process. I think they do it with lasers now. Mandatory vasectomies. No more threat against Roe versus Wade. There's no more problems with unwanted pregnancies, because they can't get pregnant as long as there's no.
Yeah. Have you been involved in protests yourself?
Absolutely. I've been involved in every kind of protest you can imagine. Protests, rallies, marches. I've never been involved in any riots, because there really hasn't been any that I've been involved in. But usually when the marches or the rallies they turn into riots, it's because the police they look forward to this. And this just came out recently, where police officers actually beat up an undercover black police officer who was trying to infiltrate the protesters, which is what they do. And I've seen them. Again, I come from a family of law enforcement as well, so I know their tricks. So I can point them out in crowds, and I always tell everybody, that guy's a cop, that guy's a cop, that guy's a cop. Because what they'll do is they'll start trying to incite people to riot. Like, let's start throwing things at the cops. Let's do this. Let's do that. No, fuck that. We tell them, no, we're here for the peaceful protest. This is nonviolent civil disobedience. This is our right as Americans. This is our First Amendment right. It's our right to assembly. And I tell them, these people need to get away from us. And then, people talk about Antifa and what that means. Well, Antifa stands for anti-fascist. So if you are against Antifa, then that means you're pro-fascist. And that goes out to all these idiot Nazi, wannabe Nazis too. Do you guys know that the Nazi stands for National Socialist Party? So if you consider yourself a Nazi, you're a fucking socialist. Then stop giving Bernie Sanders shit, because you're a fucking socialist, you fucking morons. They don't even know what they're about. The problem is with white people is that we've lost our heritage from Europe. What's your background? What are you, Irish?
I'm Hungarian.
Hungarian.
Polish.
Okay, so you're Polish. So you should be proud of that. Be proud of your Polish background. Be proud of where you come from, and what your people did to get here, and what they did over there, and all the great things they did in their history. And I think if people started to really focus on their ancestry and that they are descendants of great things, then they won't feel so lost in this country. And talk about white culture. What the fuck is white culture? What, that we don't have melanin in our skins? Khaki pants, gap culture, what, golf? I mean, what the fuck is white culture? It doesn't matter. There's no such thing. I'm Irish. I'm proud to be Irish. When the Irish first came here as immigrants, we were thought of as the same way we were talked about. There were anti-Irish leagues to keep the Irish out of America. Go back. It's all Google. You can all use the Google, everybody. Google it. There's like no dogs, no Irish allowed in certain hotels, certain bars, certain places. They thought that we were bringing disease over from the old country, that we were going to destroy America with our Catholicism, and that we smelled bad, and that we were evil, ugly people, and that we were filled with demons. And these are Irish folks. Now, we've all sort of just blended together, and now they just consider Irish, white. When the Germans hated the Irish, the Dutch hated the Irish, the English hated the Irish. That happened up until just on 9/11, when the Irish Republican Army decided that they didn't want to be considered a terrorist organization and get bombed by the Bush administration back then. So they became a political party, and now they're a political party in Ireland. But I think it's important that, if we're going to have African Americans, Asian Americans, that we should also have European Americans, because that's who we are. We came here from Europe. You only got to this country in one of 4 ways. You were an immigrant, you're a refugee, you were a slave, or you're an asylum seeker. And right now, the Trump administration is breaking all kinds of international laws, because if you seek asylum in any country in this world, you are allowed into that country. And by leaving those people outside for almost 2 weeks now, in the elements, building in 10 cities, they're breaking international law. And because the Republicans still have control of Congress, they're gutless. Please tell them to turn that off. They're gutless, they're spineless, they got no, they don't care about anybody but themselves and how much money they can make, because all these assholes are going to retire just as soon as the Democrats take over, and they're going to go start working for lobbyist firms where they're going to make a shit ton of money because they've got all the connections in Washington, D.C. And that's why it was remarkable to see this election season, how many women were voted, how many young people voted, how many women were elected, how many people of different nationalities and backgrounds, orientations. We had the first 2 Native American women ever elected to Congress. And this is their country.
Mm-hmm.
This is Native American country.
Yeah.
They're the first 2 Native American women. One of them's lesbian, and she's also an MMA fighter. So I'd love to see any of those old ass fucking, Republicans try to talk shit to her the way they try to talk down to all the other ladies in Congress.
Yeah. Now back to your music. If people want to, find you online, look you up, how do they do that?
I'm on every social media platform except Twitch, which that's going to change soon. I'm on Twitter, Otep Official, Facebook, Otep Official, Instagram, Otep Official. We have a website called oteploves.me. We have an online merch page called otepsaves.me. So you can find us online anywhere. Again, you can also just Google.
Yeah, and latest single for people to look up?
Our label didn't put out any singles this time, so but I think if people want to, our 3 favorite songs, and we're playing them on this tour, are Halt Right, which is against these asshole Nazis, wannabes, and Molotov, which is against these Nazi wannabes, and also people that wave Confederate flags, which again I don't understand, because the United States military beat the shit out of the Confederacy, so why are you still waving a Confederate flag? First, it's the wrong flag. That's a flag of a particular battalion within the Confederacy. The Confederate flag itself was a different flag. And then the Nazis want to wave around that stupid swastika flag. The only flag that they deserve the right to wave is a flag of surrender, because they get their asses kicked twice by the United States military. Hoo-ah! So, Molotov, Halt Right, and this other song called Boss, which I love because it's about challenging gender roles in this country. I get a lot of people calling me. They'll say, "Oh, Otep, you're such a boss bitch because you speak your mind." And I'm like, why you gotta genderize that? Why can't I just be a boss? Why can't I be that? And so that's what the song's about. It's about challenging gender roles. You don't call hopefully you don't say a doctor's a female doctor. She's just a doctor. A lawyer is a lawyer, not a little female lawyer. So why we gotta make a boss about gender
rights?
Yeah, that's right. And that's another great song off of our previous album, Equal Rights, Equal Lefts, which is about the LGBTQ community and us fighting for our rights to exist, because right now the Trump administration is trying to remove trans rights from people, trans people from entering the military, which is pretty fucking funny to me, because one of the men who was a Navy SEAL, he was part of SEAL Team 6, which of course who killed Osama bin Laden, after he retired, came out as transgendered, and he challenged Trump to whatever he wanted to do, and he'd do it in heels if he wanted to. And I'd like to see Trump, who got 5 deferments because of his rich fucking daddy, whose hands are, his tiny little hands are soft as a baby's foot, never done a hard work in his life, got 5 deferments out of Vietnam because of his rich father, which means 5 other young men took his place. 5 other young men maybe lost their lives, lost their limbs, or lost something going over there to take that fucking coward's place, all because he had a bone spur in his fucking heel. Fuck him and fuck everybody that supports that fucking piece of shit. And I can't wait till the day that he's impeached or indicted. That'll be the biggest parade America's probably ever seen in our lives.
Right.
So you want to find all that? You'll find that on our new record called 45.
Cool.
We are a part of the resistance, and we're not giving up until he's out of here, and then we can start writing about some other things.
Right. There'll always be something in the
That's
world
right.
to write about.
Oh yeah, there is. I mean, and it's not always about writing about injustices either. I mean, sometimes we write songs to have fun with. I mean, there's a song on the new record on Cult 45 called "Be Brave," and it's a ballad. It's probably the closest thing to Perfectly Flawed that I've written. I wrote it with my guitar player Aristotle. He plays piano on it, And it's about stepping out of your comfort zone and about living your authentic self. And I think that's part of also our message. Beyond the politics of it is about really and truly loving your authentic self, loving who you are, not letting someone else define you. Telling you what you should wear, what you should dress like, what you should think, what character you're supposed to play in the society. Who decides that? What puritanical elite somewhere decides? At one time it was forbidden for women to wear pants in this country. Lucille Ball helped break that rule when she wore pants on TV. Well, at one time women weren't allowed to wear pants on the street or they go to jail. I mean, that's ridiculous. So, people always give me shit about my hair because it's short. Well, why?
Your style, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we pay way too much attention to things that aren't important. And instead of us fighting over, these kinds of things, we should be focused on really what's important in this country, which is infrastructure, which is making sure that our schools are safe from gun violence, and also that they're funded enough so that teachers get more pay, because they should be paid just as, in my opinion, teachers should be paid as much as professional athletes, because they're basically babysitting children from 8 o'clock till 3 o'clock, if that's still what time kids go to school. I don't know. I don't have any kids, so I don't know. But they're basically doing that. Plus, they're educating, they're pollinating the minds with the next generation of leaders and workers in this country. And I think that's a and a lot of these teachers have to spend their own money to make sure that these kids have food, to make sure that they have enough books, to make sure they have enough supplies. So we stand with teachers as well, and we hope that matters, and we also want a living wage for people, so that
Exactly.
older folks who have to supplement their income because they're trying to privatize Social Security, and they're cutting Social Security benefits, or veterans who the VA just now, because of all the public pressure, were refusing to pay back payments that they owed to our veterans. Our veterans went to war. They protected this country. They served with honor, and they deserve the best. So it's important that we don't get caught up in the small things that keep us divided. As the 98% of this country, and really focus more on why 2% of this country owns more than all the wealth than the rest of us do.
Sure.
And the way they do that is because they keep making these weird fucking tax cuts where the rich get these gigantic tax cuts, and they raise the rich on the working class, and we pay more money, which means we get poor because they're trying to destroy the middle class. That's the first thing you want to do in an autocracy, is get rid of the middle class. You want really rich and really poor. You don't want a thriving middle class that can actually fight back against you in politics or any other way. It's we're a top-down society. We're not a monarchy. We're not based on a bloodline.
Even for artists, they make it difficult too.
Oh, sure. I mean, people that I have millions and millions of listens on Spotify and Pandora, but they don't pay artists anything. They pay us pennies.
Yeah,
labels.
You're a big national headlining band.
That's right. Yeah, I've got millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of listens, and I get barely anything. $60 maybe.
Wow.
From all that. Yeah, and that's from Spotify and Pandora. And so the Music Modernization Act, which just passed, is supposed to levelize that playing field.
Artists,
Which and look, if you what I like to say is this, is like art is art. So you go to a museum or something, right? And you see a Picasso, and you're like, say Picasso is one of the most famous artists. People know who Picasso is, right?
Of course.
I say Basquiat, maybe they may not know, or Matisse, they may not know, but you say Picasso, most people know. You see a Picasso on the wall, and you go, God, wow, that is amazing. That is beautiful. That's revolutionary what he did, especially at the time when he was when his Cubism stage and all the things that he did, because he could actually paint. He didn't just do those weird fucking drawings. This kid could actually paint realism. And so, but when you're having your worst day, or you're having your best day, do you go look at a Picasso, or do you put on this? Do you put on one of your favorite songs to celebrate? You get a raise at your job, or you find out that your wife, your girl, or is pregnant, or you find out something joyful in your life, or something terrible happens, and you wanna feel that in a way that only music can provide. Mm-hmm. I liken our set list to a canvas, You know, we play the same set list pretty much every night.
Okay.
The painting is the same, the canvas is the same, but the painting changes every night according to the audience. You know, according to what energy they give, and according to what energy we can give back.
Yeah,
So,
I've seen you a couple times, and the audience has always been.
oh, it's always, and they're
A lot
different.
of high
They're
energy.
different. Yeah, always different, and always high. Yeah, we have the best
Especially
fans.
you on stage, you're always.
Thank you, I
jumping
appreciate
around.
that, and my band is great as well. And but I'll say this, you know, Picasso is going to cost you $30-40 million. A song is $1.99. That tops. So you know, if you care about music, if you care about art, if you care about your favorite bands, then support them. You know, that's the reason why people worry about, like, why is pop music taking over? Why is hip hop taking over? Well, that's because in other genres, people have chosen to stop buying music. So labels, who are businesses, people have to remember that they are a business. They look at what's selling. What can I make the most money off of? Oh, the thing that people are buying. So I'm going to sign those artists. I'm going to stop signing these other bands in this other genre because it doesn't
They're
make
getting
any
the
money.
mainstream radio play too.
That's right, and they get that, and so they're gonna focus more on what makes them money versus whether or not they believe in a project or they believe in
Which
it.
is nice. You haven't, converted to the mainstream. You've stuck with your cause.
I have, and we've survived all the fads that have gone on. You know, I mean, people called us new metal in the beginning, which is fine. I don't care about the labels. Labels are for soup cans and boner pills, as far as I'm concerned. You know, but
You're classified as a lot of genres like rap metal,
trap
alternative
metal, yeah, they give us all kinds of genres. They can't figure us out, which is fine. I'm glad about that because I don't let a specific, I don't want to be boxed in. I never want to be caged in. And I tell that, you know, when we Aristotle and I, the guitar player, we co-produced this last record. And when I sat down with the band, I just told them, I said, there are no rules. That's the only rule. There's no rules. One rule, no rules. And
That's the freedom, yeah.
and let the music take you where it takes you, because you know, like for example, our drummer Justin Keir, best drummer I've ever played with in my life. He has so many different styles that he can play, from reggae to funk to metal to jazz to punk to whatever. You tell him to give you a beat and he'll give you a beat. Same thing with my bass player Drew, best bass player I've ever played with. He's a finger player too, for all you bass snobs. He's not a pick player, although there are some great pick players out there. Nirvana's bass player was a pick player, great player. I think Iron Maiden's, no, not Iron Maiden. Oh shit, they're gonna give me shit about it now, but there's another great pick player out there as well. Who is it?
Pantera, Rex Brown.
Oh, Pantera, yeah, Pantera, there it is. But there was another one too. What's the other guy?
Shit.
They were on Ozfest with me. I can't remember the name, but anyway, they got a great pick player as well. But I know a lot of bass players, snobs, who are all about finger playing, and he's a finger player. He's great. Again, he's got the same kind of influences: jazz, to punk, to rock, to funk, to whatever. You can ask him to play, and he'll play. And Aristotle, the most talented musician I've ever worked with. I can put a harp down in front of him, and in 5 seconds he figured out how to play it. I can put down a sitar in front of him, and he can play that in 5 seconds. He can play anything. You know, and that's what I wanted to bring to this record, and I didn't want any, plus the particular kind of stand we were taking in the beginning, which is a very political, very harsh statement against this particular idiot that's sitting in the Oval Office. I didn't want any producer to worry about his reputation or her reputation. Also didn't want them to worry about us dividing our audience or any of that stuff, because I've never cared about that in the 15 years I've been doing this. What I care about is being authentic and being genuine, because
Being real, yeah.
that's right. Because on my last day on this planet, I could put 20 summers on this wall and mark one off every summer, and hopefully I'll get 20 more summers. You know, think about that. That's real. And all your viewers out there can do the same thing. They can mark down. They can put 20 summers on the wall. Hope they get 20 summers. And if you get them, good for you. But the point is, at the end of my days, I don't want to look back and go, oh, I sold out because I wanted more money and I wanted this and I wanted that. No, I wanted to make sure that when I leave this planet, I've left with my integrity, my authenticity, and my art intact.
And that's what you can respect.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much, because that's all I ever wanted. You know, I never wanted to join the fads. I never wanted to do any of that stuff. I just wanted to be authentic. So we will evolve. I mean, that's the goal of any musician and any singer as me. I mean, I want to be a better songwriter, a better storyteller, a better lyric writer, a better performer. The the longer we do this, the older I get, I want to get better. And the same thing with my band. You know, we want to keep evolving. And I think with Cult 45, the new record that's out right now on all digital platforms, by the way, iTunes, Amazon, Google, wherever you get your music.
Right.
You know, we wanted to make sure that we found our sound, and I think we really did find our sound on this album. Thank you very much. I think that, you know, us in the past, we were always sort of afraid of afraid is probably not the right word, but we were always under, you know, whenever you bring a producer in, sometimes they have a lot of influence over the way you write things, and you don't really realize it because they kind of become part of the band as well, and you trust them. You have to. You know, if you're going to work with somebody on something as intimate as creating art, then you trust them. Mm-hmm. So with this record, we really wanted it to be us, purely us. And I think that we found,
more raw, yeah.
And we also wanted it to sound as powerful as we do out front, not as, but still polished like a record should sound. And you know, Aristotle mixed and mastered it, and I think he did a great job with that as well. So you know, I think with Cult 45, we found our sound. So I think if people are wondering what we're going to be doing next, we're going to be doing more of this style of sound in the future. Maybe even get a little heavier, maybe get a little. Maybe try some more creative, try some different things, see if they work. If they don't, they don't. I mean, a lot of songs we write sometimes never make the record because they just don't pan out, you know, and maybe they'll make it.
You ever thought about doing a B-sides album?
You know, we've thought about doing a lot of things. It really always comes down to whether or not the record company wants to be behind it. And, you know, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It just depends on, you know, whether or not they think it's going to be successful for them, not necessarily for the band.
Right.
And that's the hard part about, you know, when I first started out as an artist, I really thought I was going to find, when we were talking about Picasso earlier, I thought I was going to find a bunch of other Picassos. You know, I thought I was going to be entering into the art world. Well, it's actually a business, and you have to learn that as an artist. And you have to learn, and that's why I think a lot of artists self-destruct over time, because it's hard to make that dissection between business and art, creativity and industry, and also finding that place of something that's very literal, which is the business side, and then something that's more imaginative, which is the creative side. And you have to do that if you want to be successful. Right. If you were all constantly rely on managers or agents or labels, you're constantly going to be shifting between what they think you should do. And so the only way is to learn as much as you can, as much as you want, about the business side, and then try to keep your creativity intact as much as possible. And you know, and that means, you know, don't get comfortable no matter how many records you release. You know, constantly evolve, constantly listen to other genres, listen to other music. You know, as a writer, read more than you write. That's the first. One of my greatest friends who recently passed away. He was a legendary writer named Harlan Ellison, who told me that, you know, he always said, you know, you have to, you know, you read more than you write. That's the greatest sinner of a writer.
Right.
You know, read more than you write. You know, same thing with players. I think you got to play more. You know, learn more different styles of music. You know, rehearse more than you play. You know, keep your chops up. You know, keep everything ready, because you know, you never know when you're going to be put in a situation where suddenly, you know, we'll just be jamming sometimes. Like in the studio, we did that a lot on this last record, where we just be jamming, and then all of a sudden something imaginable will happen. It's a mistake, and we're like, that's it. Oh, that's the part that we've been looking for. But it was just this subconscious thing that just sort of came out of nowhere, you know. So
I think they're looking for you.
Oh, I don't know, whatever. What's that say? What's that say?
Boss.
That's all right. It says bars. All right. Well, but I hope I answered enough of your questions. I know sometimes I ramble on a lot about politics.
No, it was great.
Unfortunately, you know, it's, if you are a patriotic American and you've been waiting your whole lifetime to look back, when you look back on American history and you say, man, what would I have done? I would have fought during the civil rights. I would have been on the right side of history during that. Or, you know, what would I have done during World War II when the fascists were trying to take over? You know, or what would I have done when we were committing the greatest genocide in almost world history against the Native Americans? What would I have done? Well, it's happening now. So as a patriot of this country, you have a chance to stand up and fight for your rights. And if I can say one good thing about Cheeto Schittler, and my little fun phrase for him, is that he's taught people civics again, which of course Republicans decided to take out of schools because, what I learned about when I first learned about how government works was from Schoolhouse Rock. You remember that? Do you ever remember that? Do you ever see that? I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. He's like, somebody needs to ask that fool. Like, once his bronzer's done. That's another thing I never understood. Like, how could tough guys ever support this asshole who puts bronzer on? Like, just on his face, too. Doesn't do his arms or his hands or anything. Like, how y'all respect that? That's so fucking weird to me. But, and also somebody that got elected who claimed that he was going to create jobs, but he was made famous by a reality TV show where he fired people. I mean, that was his, right? You're fired. That was his thing. Like, who gets off on firing people? What a fucking asshole. But, right now, it's now. It's like, it's time. Like, rise up, if he's done anything great for this country, he's brought people back into knowing, as citizens, knowing that the true power lies in our hands. And this is a great time for art. It's a great time for artists to stand up and be heard because, one of the things that we know most about ancient civilizations and even our own history in America is through art and music. Woody Guthrie wrote a song about Trump's father. Did you know that? You know Woody Guthrie? Mm-hmm. This land is our land, this land is your land. That song, that's Woody Guthrie. That's why Bob Dylan thinks he could sing, because he heard Woody Guthrie sing and he was like, oh my God, wow. But no disrespect, I'm just kidding. But Woody Guthrie was a great songwriter, was not a great singer to me, but still, fantastic, iconic human being. But he wrote songs about Trump's father because Trump's father was a racist slumlord, and he was just doing terrible, terrible things to African American culture in those days, and that lasted all the way up through. I mean, the government fined the Trump organization when they would mark the letter C on any African American applicants to their apartments, which meant colored, and they would just throw them in the trash. So, he was fined for that by the government. He was also fined $250 million, I think, because he was running Russian mafia money. He was laundering Russian mafia money through his failed casino. I mean, who fails a fucking casino? Anybody ever seen the movie Casino? House always wins. How do you fucking, bankrupt a casino? Well, he's filed bankruptcy 4 times in 11 years. That's why no banks in America would ever lend to him, so that's why he had to go to the Russians and Saudis. And that's what you're seeing today now. When the Saudi government can get away with killing an American journalist by dismembering him with hacksaws and I mean, just terrible way, and they recorded it. It's just awful. And then Trump says, well, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But the CIA says he did. So he's going to go against our own Justice Department and believe it's a foreign country who absolutely does not have our best interest in mind. So now's a great time for that. You look back at the 60s and the Civil Rights Movement, and we remember, the music that came out of that. It was about, liberating, ending segregation and misogyny laws and all those things, and miscegenation laws, and the same thing goes back to, ancient Egypt. How we know about their language was art. So we know it was hieroglyphs. They were hieroglyphics. They were art, and so that's what we know about ancient cultures, because their clothes, their culture, all of those things, their fashion, those things go away, but their art is forever. And so that's why I think it's important for artists to speak out. They've got a platform. They have the right to do it. They're citizens. They're Americans, just like everybody else. And
it's great the way you speak out.
Thank you. And but at the same time, we also have a fucking kick-ass show. We just rock it out too. So
look forward to seeing.
Oh, it's gonna be good tonight. Yeah, I hope you film some of it too. So
I'll film some, put it at the end of this. That'd be cool.
That'd be great. You
interview and then live footage.
Oh, great.
Cool.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'll let them know you'll be free to do whatever you want to do.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
It was really good talking to
Thank
you, and look them up.